that they were all liable for karet. And one way to free yourself from karet, I think the only way, according to the Talmud, is to receive lashes by the court. But the only court that's allowed to give you lashes is a court that actually has smicha. So they wanted to reinstitute smicha to free people from karet. It was also tied to the Spanish Inquisition because there were many people that under duress accepted Christianity that, according to rabbinic opinion, they were also liable for karet. So these two things forced them to try to recreate the smicha process in order to be able to give people lashes. Now, one thing that probably you guys have never seen before, but if someone's lived in Israel long enough, I'm sure they've seen it, is other people giving each other lashes before Yom Kippur with their tefillin. Now, this is like the silliest sight you guys are ever going to see. With their tefillin straps, like they'll whip each other as a form of, it can act like a kapara, being that we're talking about lashes.
So that never stopped. I thought that stopped in the Middle Ages.
No, this is more like of a mystical, devotional understanding of it. There's other examples of people torturing themselves apart from that. There's sources that say that people would roll around in the snow in Europe to torture themselves to in some way take their sins away. Heck, but you guys are all familiar with the chicken, the notion of shlugging kaporis.
But rabbinical discipline, I mean, how far, when did that stop? I mean, rabbinical discipline today, I mean, I don't really see it. I mean, but it was back then. They would lash you. They would step on your back.
Well, I don't know about stepping on your back.
Yeah, that one, what's his name? That philosopher.
Josephus, Philo?
No, he was in the Middle Ages.
So in terms of the rabbinical, I always think of the rabbis in the Talmud. When people ever say the word sage in Judaism, sages or chazal, they always mean Amoraim and Tanaim. Only someone who's new to Judaism will call like the Rambam a sage or something like that. Orthodox Jews don't speak like that. They'll say regarding the sages, who they call chazal, that's Amoraim and Tanaim. But if you really want to be technical, it's Tanaim and before.
Hey, quick one as well. Another one. Why is the current Israeli court not considered the Sanhedrin today? Why is that?
There were many rabbis, including the Brisker Rav, who were against the establishment of the Rabbanut, because the Rabbanut was really formulated to look and to be a Sanhedrin. Now, we have a modern-day Sanhedrin that people really don't accept. It was created in 2005 with Adin Steinsaltz as the Nasi. But anyways,
Rav Avraham Kook, who was the first chief rabbi of Palestine, the reason it's Palestine because before the state of Israel was established, he was formulated to resemble the Sanhedrin. There was actually 71 members to the Rabbanut.
Yeah, because I think there's 120 there now, and it is divided into, I think 49 are on one side and then the other 71. I read it on Wikipedia, something like that anyway.
The Rabbanut or the Knesset, or the Supreme Court of Israel?
Yeah, the Knesset, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's comprised of 120 people, but it is divided into 71 and 49.
Right. I think the Knesset has 120 people, which is, I think, how they broke down how the court used to look in the time of the men of the Great Assembly. It has some sort of significance. But being that Israel is made up of Chilonim, of irreligious Jews, I'm pretty sure
who makes the decision to say that is not the Sanhedrin? Who says that? Was that just the religious people, or
like what's not the Sanhedrin?
Well, the current day Israeli court. Why can't we say, all right, well, this is the ruling body in Israel at the moment?
Oh, but they don't claim to be. That's the thing.
But whether they claim to be or not, they still are a ruling body, like the Sanhedrin is as well. Like, does God view it as a Sanhedrin, or just we don't because we don't believe in it? I don't know.
Sanhedrin was just the name of any court in Israel back then in biblical Israel. There were many Sanhedrins. However, there was only one great Sanhedrin. Like in Hebrew, it's called the Beit Din Hagadol. But they have what's known as Beit Din Katana, which is a smaller Beit Din. And all the Shvatim, every tribe had their own court. But all these courts looked for the Supreme Court the one that sat on top of the Lishkat HaGazit, the room of hewn stones on top of the Temple Mount, for the ultimate rulings. Only because there's a court of Jews in Israel doesn't mean that they're recreating the great Sanhedrin. Now, Sanhedrin is a Greek word. There's a lot of these foreign words that enter rabbinic literature. But I think the closest, the proper word is Beit Din HaGadol. The Yanshe Knesset HaGedolah, the men of the Great Assembly, was also considered this court.
Hey, Rabbi Meza, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
No, I have a question. It's a little bit off topic as well, but it's in regards to Exodus 20, the third verse, about not having other gods before, the God of the Torah.
Mm-hmm.
So my question is this: do you believe is your view of God and the one that you teach to people?
All right, it's going to be a good question. It's already, you're setting it up in such a way. All right, but go ahead.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So, is your view of God one that definitionally both fills the heavens, but also can manifest in human form on earth?
Sure.
Oh, it is?
Mm-hmm. Why not?
Okay, good. Well, I mean, because I didn't know, because a lot of Jews that I've spoken with, they would reject that idea based on Numbers 23. But I know, like, and there's a lot of objections to, like, the Christian position based on, we worship Jesus as God, and you're committing idolatry because of that. But I always thought that was really inconsistent based on the foundation of the Torah.
So Numbers 23, God is not a man that he should lie, or the son of man that he should change his mind.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Okay. I've never found that as a very convincing verse that God can't become a man. I personally don't believe that God could become a man. However, I don't think the Torah teaches against it. So the reason that most Jews are adamant of not accepting that possibility in their theology is that the Rambam, Maimonides, laid down Jewish philosophy. And he said that God can't limit himself to become a man. It's beneath him. God's too great for that. Fine. I appreciate the Rambam's teachings. Well, the Rambam lived from 1135 to 1205 of the Common Era. The Torah does describe God take on bodily form. And the Rambam even acknowledged this. However, he said that when this happens in the Torah narrative, it doesn't happen in real life. It only happens in a vision or a dream. Now, the text doesn't say that, but I could see how he can come up with that. But I'm not going to say that the Torah is against the notion. Not that God is a man. I don't think the argument that the average sophisticated Christian is making that God is a man. But I think the more sophisticated argument is that could he embody flesh and blood for a short period of time?
Okay, but the thing is, I'm a little bit confused because I thought you answered that you are fine with that belief, but then it seems like you said a minute ago that you don't believe that personally.
I don't personally believe it, but the Torah is not against it. I have a lot of personal beliefs also, but I'm not going to condemn you for not accepting those beliefs.
All right, but my question is that, though, based on Exodus 23, okay, if I'm an ancient Israelite hearing the Pentateuch read to me, and my definition of God is formed based on the 5 books of Moses, then whenever I get to this command, have no other gods before me, if my definition of God that I believe in is anything different than the way that he explicitly reveals himself in the Pentateuch, then how would that not be in constant violation to Genesis 20, the third verse? You shall have no other gods before me.
I don't understand your question. Saying that if someone chooses not to believe that God is a man or that God could become a man, he's in some way contradicting the Torah?
No, what I'm saying is that if someone ascribes to a definition of God other than the one revealed in the Pentateuch, then isn't that person violating, essentially believing in another God, because the God who he's believing in is definitionally different than the one in the way that he reveals himself in the Pentateuch.
He doesn't consistently reveal himself in any specific manner in the Pentateuch. We don't know exactly how God functions. It could be tied into the notion of angels. There's many times that the angel of the Lord acts as an extension of God himself. Angel just means messenger, but sometimes people bow down to a messenger and call it God. That shows that we don't know how God reveals himself to people. That when Jacob wrestled the messenger of God and then acknowledges that as some sort of extension of God, does that put us in a position to say that we know how God reveals himself to people? I don't know. And what I'm not going to do is exclude people for not accepting my interpretation of what I think the Torah says. But the Torah doesn't tell us.
Yeah, but the thing is, Rabbi Meza, it's not an interpretation to read Genesis 18 through 19 and see that Yahweh on earth is calling down fire and sulfur from Yahweh in heaven.
It actually is an interpretation because it's used elsewhere, but that's a formal way of just saying God. To assume that that means that there's two separate gods, that Yahweh on earth, when really JC never really acknowledged himself to be a separate father, but he even made a distinction between the Yud Ke Vav Ke, i.e. the Father, and himself. But that's not a distinction you're making. Like you're teaching like the UPC teaches that the Father is the Son is the Holy Spirit.
Oh, no. All I'm saying is that...
Yeah, you're saying that there's two Yud Ke Vav Kes, right?
No. I'm saying that I'm an Israelite hearing Moses read the Pentateuch, right? Okay. Just like he was commanded to do. Okay, so when I get to this command...
Wait. Yeah, that's not a command. Genesis is not part of the Pentateuch.
No. I'm saying when I get to the command in Exodus 20, the third verse, have no other gods before me. Okay, well, in order for that command to be intelligible, that requires me to have an explicit definition of the true God, right?
Not necessarily. It means...
Yeah, it does.
No, as it appears elsewhere, don't have any foreign gods. Okay,
but all it says is have no other gods before me. So what I'm saying is that if I'm an ancient Israelite and my definition
of foreign gods, I've discussed this many times, that the notion of idolatry nowadays, avodah zarah, what doesn't appear like that in the Torah. However, what does appear is the notion of avodat elilim, the worship of other gods, other foreign outside of what you heard on the mountain. That's what it's...
Yeah, but the thing is, I mean, people can make up their own religions, I mean, as much as they want. I mean, people can have private... Okay, my point is that it seems very clear that a person who doesn't believe in the definition of God as he reveals himself explicitly in the Pentateuch is in constant violation.
Wait, hold on. There's no objective definition of God as he appears in the Pentateuch. We all try to do the best with what we can extract in mainly those 4 books, because the book of Genesis, as you said, when Moses was reading over the law, there was no book of Genesis because there are no laws in Genesis outside of laws given to all humanity. Okay.
Yeah, but that doesn't make sense. I mean, so in Exodus 26, Moses...
Mount Sinai, the story of Noah was given over, the 6 days of creation and the story of Jacob?
No, the thing is, my question is based on Leviticus 26. Whenever Moses refers back to the covenants made with the patriarchs, that would presuppose that his audience would have knowledge of the Genesis narrative.
Wait.
Right?
Having knowledge of a story is different than calling it the law. The law, as what Jews had to read every year during the ceremony of Hakel, was the book of the law, not the narrative or the legends of their forefathers. So you can't say that because it speaks about Hashem raining fire from heaven to Hashem on the ground, that's some sort of law to believe in dualism.
No. I'm not saying that's law. I'm saying that that's the definition of the true God. And anyone that deviates from that definition is in constant violation to Exodus 20.
What's the third verse? That there's 2 gods?
That obviously God is complex in his unity.
I never had an issue with the notion of God being complex in his unity. But if you're looking...
Wait. Said that you don't believe that God both fills the heavens and
That's not what I said. No. I said that I don't believe that God is a man, number one. And I don't believe personally that God could become a man. Although the Torah has a lot of ambiguous ideas that one can't use to try to define God. And that's what you're trying to do. If you really wanted a plain understanding according to what appears in the book of Genesis, well, then you would have to acknowledge that there are two gods, correct? You're saying no.
You would have to acknowledge that both God, as described in the Shema, is echad, so he's one. But also within that, we would have to give room for a complexity within that based on the definition and the way that he explicitly reveals himself.
All right,
in
so the Torah then
himself.
doesn't define what God is or what God isn't.
It absolutely does.
Now, you just said that God is echad, and then earlier you said that God appears as two individuals raining fire on himself. So that's a clear definition. A definition means that he puts a stop to the nonsense and tells you, this is who I am. The Torah doesn't say that. I wish it did say that.
No, the entire,
Hold on. Why don't you just say that you also don't know what God is and what God isn't? But you're trying to understand, right?
No. The thing is, I do have the correct definition of God because I go to the Pentateuch and I see that the entirety of how he reveals himself is my definition. And so I know that...
Oh, but that's not a definition.
It is.
That God is a complex unity is not saying that you know what God is and you're able to define him. Like in one verse, it's showing you that God is two, according to that verse. And now you're saying that God is one, according to the Shema. We don't know. I personally don't believe that God could become a man.
Okay, but the very Pentateuch that you stand on says contradicts that. Contradicts your belief. So how are you not in perpetual violation to Exodus 20, the third verse?
Can God become a horse?
Well, I would have to go to the Bible to see if he's ever done that. So I would answer based on that.
So according to the literal text of the Bible, God physically became a man?
According to the literal text, God, I'll just give you one instance.
Man.
He ate dinner with Abraham and he ate meat and cheese together.
Does that mean that he became a man, flesh and blood?
Yes, it does.
No, it doesn't.
All right.
In the Torah, that God in the heaven smells the odor of your sacrifice. You're telling me that he's a man in the heaven or a spirit?
I'm saying that
only because someone dwells around you, what doesn't mean he's flesh and blood, correct?
Can you say that again?
Only because someone happens to dwell around you doesn't mean that individual happens to be flesh and blood, correct?
It can mean that.
But you just said that you defined God. Now you're saying that he's really ambiguous because it might mean this or it might mean that. I'm saying that we don't know enough to give a definitive response.
Okay, no. What I'm saying...
You're just acknowledging that you don't understand also fully. I'm ready to say that I don't know fully. I have my own personal beliefs. I personally believe that God can't become a man, that he wouldn't do that. Okay, but I'm not going to say the Torah condemns you because it's ambiguous. Why do you acknowledge that you don't know the Torah as well as you think you do regarding what God is or what God isn't?
All right, no, the thing is, Rabbi Meza, is the Torah is not ambiguous. And what I'm saying is that from my
Torah is ambiguous. But the simple fact, you just gave three definitions of what God possibly is. It's not definitional.
No, it's all consistent. He's echad. He's one in being, but he's obviously more complex in his persons, which is how we can make sense of Genesis 18 and 19.
Okay. So when the Torah itself tells you that the secret things are for God, pretty much what you're trying to do right now, define and put him in a box, and only the revealed things are for us to do. Don't you think that's him telling you to get off the subject?
No, because the revealed things is what he's revealed in the Pentateuch, which is exactly what I'm talking about. I'm giving you chapter and verse, and you're saying that it's ambiguous.
Secret things that are not clear. Revealing something is not picking here and picking there and trying to compile a 3 or 4 headed God and saying, I've defined God. That's what the Kabbalists do. That's what the Christians do. And that's what you're trying to do now. This is what
the Pentateuch does for us.
I told you from the beginning that I don't have a problem with you assuming that God could become a man. I just don't personally believe that. Why shouldn't that be enough?
well, it's not enough because it's in violation to my simple understanding
Okay.
of Exodus 20, verse 3. Because
So the problem is your lack of understanding that.
No,
You're not able to acknowledge that someone else could have a valid opinion. I'm acknowledging that you could have a valid opinion of what you think God is. Why? Because the Torah is not crystal clear. The Torah
it's objective. It's objective.
The Torah, in terms of its authority, is objective. In how it describes what God is and what God isn't is very subjective because we don't know. That's it. We don't know. Let's just leave it there.
Okay, Rabbi, he's revealed it. Like the thing is, is God could have chosen not to.
All right. So what's your point?
Genesis. Oh, can you say that again? Sorry.
Is your point that I'm breaking the Torah?
Oh, of course.
Okay. Fine.
Okay. Okay. So can you, if that's what your foundation is, can you explain to me how that's not a problem based on the Torah?
Come on, man.
This is going around in circles. Come on, bro.
This is silly. I have no problem with people having devotional interpretations to portions in the Torah, to portions in Tanakh. The problem I have is when people say, this is what I've defined, okay? And anyone who disagrees with my definition of what God possibly is or isn't is put outside of the fold, and I'm speaking for God. Now, throughout the Jewish people, there's different ideas of what God may have been. Heck, I just quoted the Rambam. Kabbalists have a different understanding. There is room for all that. Okay.
There's not.
I disagree with Kabbalists saying that there's 10 emanations of God. I never called it idolatrous, and I never called it against the Torah, but I called it wrong because I adhere to the philosophical understandings of the Rambam. That's my own personal thing, okay? What we know for a fact is that God gave us commandments, and that's what he will punish us or bless us because of.
And one of those commandments is to not have a theology that contradicts one of the Torah, which is the one that it seems that you have. In Exodus 20, the third verse.
So the Torah says that one should not have a theology that contradicts what?
The Torah says, "You shall have no other gods before me."
Oh, come on, man. That's it. If you want to talk about a different topic, just bring it up. But let's get off this topic because it just sounds silly.